A lot of exciting things have been happening in the Marvel Cinematic Universe lately. Avengers Endgame is officially the highest grossing movie of all time. Spider-Man Far From Home has become the first Spider-Man movie to gross over $1 billion, dollars, and we have gotten a lot of exciting news about what we can expect in phases 4 and 5 of the MCU. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to this franchise, but today we're going to go back to the beginning and rank all 6 movies from Phase 1 from the worst to the best. The MCU is a big part of the reason that I got involved in this community and started this channel. So I wanted to take the time to make some fun MCU movies for this channel. If you also love the MCU or love talking about movies in general, consider subscribing down below so that you don't miss any of my future content. Also, before I give you my ranking of the Phase 1 movies, go ahead and comment your rankings down below. I don't only want to share my opinions, I want to hear your opinions too. And with that said, let's get started. Coming in at number 6 is The Incredible Hulk. This film is often regarded as the black sheep of the MCU, as our lead actor was replaced after this movie, and there's not as many connections to the future movies in this one as there are in other movies. As a standalone movie, I actually thought this movie was fine. It definitely doesn't feel like the train wreck that some people make it out to be. Edward Norton does a good job playing Bruce Banner in a nice story about Bruce trying to find a cure for the Hulk. That said, this is definitely one of the most serious toned and slowest moving movies in the MCU. There are 3 really fun action scenes throughout this movie, but the story between those scenes definitely takes its time to flesh out the story and the characters as much as they can. I do think there are some story problems, and I think that comes from the fact that it is known that the story was heavily reworked throughout the process, and I think you can kind of tell that at times. Also, while I liked Edward Norton in the world, I can't imagine his characterization of the character gelling as well with the rest of the characters in the franchise as Mark Ruffalo's characterization of the character does. So in the end, I think the recast was for the better. Coming in at number 5 is Iron Man 2. This is an interesting movie for me because whenever I revisit it, I spend the first half of it going like, wait, no, I kind of like this one, but then spend the second half of it being reminded of all of the ways that falls short. This movie still has some of the magic of the original, especially in Robert Downey Jr.'s performance as Tony Stark, which is just as great as ever in this film. And I think it sets up things pretty well, whether you're talking about Tony's health problems, the introduction of Black Widow, or Justin Hammer even is a compelling character at the start. But the more that it introduces things one after another, the less it can focus on each storyline. And that's what this movie feels like for me. It feels like it introduces all these storylines, but there isn't time to really give any of them the attention they need. The storyline with Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. in particular just feels like a big setup for the Avengers and future movies that takes away from the time that needs to be spent on the storylines of this movie in particular. That said, I still think this is a fun movie, but it just needed to learn how to balance things a little bit better. Coming in at number 4 is Thor. This is a movie that's actually grown on me as I watched it a few times because I think it establishes the world it lives in well. It introduces us to the planet of Asgard and to our first non-human characters in the MCU. The Shakespearean feel of the direction style definitely helps with that. And I think Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston are 2 of the best actors in this franchise, and you start to see that here, even though I think they both better developed their characters in the future movies. However, whenever this movie goes to Earth, those parts just do not work for me. First off, the Earth characters, while all played by actors that I typically like, all just feel bland and definitely are not as interesting to me as the Asgard characters are. Also, while it can be fun to see Thor in this kind of fish out of water situation, I'm definitely way more intrigued by the Asgard storyline of Loki trying to take the role of king as Thor is no longer on the planet and Odin is currently on his deathbed. I think this is a fun movie, but it's one that also struggles from finding that balance to making both the Asgard and the Earth storylines equally interesting. Coming in at number 3 is Captain America: The First Avenger. The first part of this movie is, to me, one of the more interesting backstories that we have gotten in this franchise. You have a man who is passionate about something, who wants to be a part of something, but it's just not the right fit for it. But someone comes along and gives him the chance that he needs. I enjoy seeing what Steve's life was like back in this time period, and especially one of my favorite things about revisiting this movie is seeing the relationship between Steve and Bucky before all of the events of this movie and future movies happen to them. I also think Peggy Carter is a great character in this franchise and one of my favorite MCU characters in general. That said, once this movie gets past the actual backstory, it kind of falls flat for me. They make some interesting decisions, such as montaging through the war, which should be an important part of Steve's backstory. And also, the Red Skull storyline has always felt disconnected to me. For most of the movie, it feels like this totally separate storyline that just suddenly becomes Steve's problem closer to the end of the movie. So while this is a fun backstory for me, it's the type of movie where the first half of the movie is more satisfying than the second half. Coming in at number 2 is Iron Man. The movie that started it all was a fantastic introduction to this world and to this franchise. Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark is still one of the best casting decisions that Marvel has made, and you can tell what type of character that Tony is going to be within the first 5 minutes of this film. Also, while some people find the villain of this movie underwhelming, I think it's definitely the best villain story of the first 5 movies in this franchise. I do think this movie kind of suffers from some of the same pacing problems as other Phase 1 movies, and you can kind of tell how heavily improvised this movie really was. But overall, I think this was a great introduction to the MCU. But coming in at number 1 is the Avengers. After introducing us to 4 different solo franchises, Marvel found a way to combine those franchises and the different tones of those franchises and somehow make it all work. It's so fun to see all of these characters meet each other, and I think overall this still has some of the best character moments and character introductions in the entire MCU. All of our original 6 Avengers get their moment to shine throughout this movie, and you start to see what kind of bonds are forming between these characters as they all meet, that carry over into later movies in the franchise. Loki is easily the best villain, not only of Phase 1, but I would say of Phase 1 and Phase 2, and Tom Hiddleston's performance in this movie is still one of my favorite performances in the MCU. The fact that the Avengers movies actually work pretty well is something that's really interesting to me, and this is easily my favorite movie of Phase 1 because of that fact. Those are my opinions, but don't forget to leave your ranking in the comments down below, and if you liked this video and want to be sure to see future videos, be sure to like and subscribe down below so that you don't miss any of that content. Thank you for tuning into this video and supporting my channel.